Order, order. Turkle Crichton to move the motion.
Chair, I beg to move that this House has considered government support for Scotland's architectural heritage, and it's a pleasure again, Mr Effort, to serve under your chairmanship. Given my constituency, you might expect, and the Minister might expect, me to use this debate to make an appeal for the continued restoration of Kismal Castle, the jewel of Castlebay in the Isle of Barra, or the lottery-funded virtues of the restored Lewis Castle in Stornoway. Worthy as both these projects are, time is short, so I'll move directly onto what is the main subject of my debate, to the role the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the UK Government could have in what is not a local or Scottish issue, but a national and international tragedy. I'm using my time to raise the issue of the restoration of Glasgow School of Art's Mackintosh building and to make a direct appeal to the Minister and to the Government to reach out and help the complete restoration of the MAC. It's a full 10 years since fire broke out at the Mackintosh building as students prepared for their final degree show. Scotland wept, we all wept, as the news broke and the fire spread through the building, destroying the Mac Library, one of the most famous examples of Art Nouveau design in the world. The situation was grave, but £35 million restoration was nearly complete in 2018, when a second fire in June 2018 ripped through the building, engulfed the whole site and left a burnt-out shell of what should be a Grade A listed building, the crowning achievement of Charles Rennie Mackintosh. And Scotland is still grieving, and Glasgow, I would say, is still in trauma over the loss of the MAC. The pall of it still hangs over the city, and the tang of burnt timbers could be smelt still there on Garnet Hill when I walked up to the art school last week, mostly, I think, because of the demolition of the neighbouring ABC building, which was also damaged in a fire. That demolition is continuing apace, taking with it Charles and McNair's Art Deco entrance. That portico is lost to the city as well. So much of Glasgow's incredible built heritage is in danger of either falling to the elements, to neglect, to lack of funding, or simple malicious demolition. I'm glad to give way.
Member for giving way, and I'm also grateful to the Honourable Member for Strangford for stepping back there as we both attempted to intervene at the same time. I think the Honourable Member is making a powerful statement. As a daughter of a woman from Glasgow, I know the importance of the College of Art, but I think what he is also talking about is the risk, Mr Chair, is about those longer-term resilience, where acts of God or indeed acts of individuals happen, but organisations do not have the funding and local authorities do not have the funding to support. And that's true in my constituency with the St Andrews Harbour and also Largo Pier. He's appealing for direct investment. Can I support him in that?
Good. I thank the Honourable Lady for intervention, and I will come on to what is or is not considered an act of God later in my speech. Thank you, Mr.
Mr Chairman, can I say what the importance of this here is very much means a lot to my constituency, and why does it mean? Because the plantation brought my brothers and sisters from Scotland to Northern Ireland. With that, they brought their architecture and their culture and their history and their poetry and their music as well. But in my main town of Newton Ours, architecturally, the Merton Cross is a similar market to the one in Edinburgh, and similar to that in Glasgow as well. So the local council spent some money on that. Has local council spent money on the project that he has? And does he agree, as I agree with the Honourable Lady, that these pieces of history in Glasgow, Edinburgh and indeed everywhere should be preserved for future generations, and that UK-wide national funding is needed to do this?
I heartily agree with what the Honourable Gentleman said, and the links across the Irish Sea between Scotland and Northern Ireland are well known, and the influence of Scottish architecture, as I'll demonstrate in what I'm saying, is worldwide. These are other stories, but above Sauchiehall Street, wrapped in a white plastic shroud, is the burnt-out corpse of the MAC. The site is sealed like a sarcophagus against the elements. The art school board, the engineers, the architects, the firefighters, they've done their utmost The walls are still standing, but there's no sign of a phoenix rising from these ashes. The architectural value of Charles Rennie Mackintosh's masterpiece is recognised all over the world. It was built in 2 phases, from 1897 to 1899, and again from 1907 to 1999. And there's never been a building like it, either in Scotland or in the UK or in the world. It's the inspired design of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and he was only 29 when he started work on it, which is quite humbling for us. Of course, he didn't do it on his own, and he didn't spring from nowhere. Not far from here, in West Kensington, you'll find some of the inspiration for a young Mackintosh in the work of another Scottish architect, James M. Maclaren, whose towers and delicate spires find an echo in the masterpiece on Garnet Hill, which has its strands of Japanese design, of modernism, of Art Nouveau, and of sheer genius. And it was by combining imagination with engineering and art, which is pretty much as good a definition of good architecture as you can get. It was by combining these 3 elements that the MAC was created. And unlike many other monumental buildings we have, it actually worked. For over a century, the Mackintosh School of Art performed the purpose for which it was designed, combining exquisite craftsmanship and design while producing an incredible production line of talent. I never attended art school. I did live for a time next door to the MAC, and for many years I was a citizen of Glasgow. The second city was my second home. But I have many lifelong friends and graduates of Glasgow School of Art. As the song goes, the art school dance goes on forever, and the MAC runs through our personal lives as much as it does the life of the nation. In my own constituency, I think of many friends and many alumni of the MAC. My good friend Colmangs Mackay, photographer, painter, TV producer, Luke, who has only recently produced a retrospective of 40 years of work since he left the MAC. I think of Roddy Murray, the director of Enlaunter Art Gallery, ex-Dream Boy, local hero, actor and writer. Ishbel Murray, his cousin, Kenneth, her brother, both teachers and fine artists. Maggie Smith, Harris Tweed designer. Kenneth Burns, landscape painter who has chronicled Glasgow and its native islands. Christine Davidson and many others. And out with the islands, I think of Andy Scott, the internationally renowned figurative sculptor of the Kelpies. I think of David Pratt, my friend, photojournalist and war correspondent, who turned his unflinching lens on the flames of the art school as it was consumed for a second time around. The impact and the influence of the art school has been profound on all our lives, and not just those who were lucky enough to pass through its doors. It is a structure which is integral to Scotland's identity, central to the image of brand Scotland we want to portray, and an asset to the UK on the world stage.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I certainly will.
Thank you, and I congratulate my honourable friend for securing this debate. On that point, does he agree with me that the Art Nouveau, Charles Rennie Mackintosh style speaks to a time when Scotland looked outward into the world? Art Nouveau, you can find examples of Rennie Mackintosh in Paris in the Musée d'Orsay, and the Japonisme spoke to a Scotland that was looking outward. When we think of the School of Art in my home city of Glasgow being wrapped in sheets, it is also part of a group of buildings like those on Waterloo Street, like those on Carlton Street, which are falling into decay. And so Scotland isn't looking out into the world and preserving its architecture. And does he agree with me that the new government in the UK should be stepping up to protect this, but also the Scottish government has a role, and it's disappointing no representatives of that party are here to even listen to this debate?
Thank the honourable member for his intervention and his point that Glasgow is a cultural lighthouse and a beacon, though much decayed, as he's noted, in present days. But its buildings do speak to the world, and will again too, hopefully, when the MAC is restored. And what did Winston Churchill say? That we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. And the MAC and Glasgow School of Art has certainly done that. A 20th century dynamo which has produced some of the most talented British artistic practitioners we've seen. Doctor Who went to Glasgow School of Art in the shape of Peter Capaldi, my favourite reboot. And coincidentally, my good friend Annie Grace, a piper who was also at Glasgow School of Art, is sharing the stage with another doctor, David Tennant, in the West End in Macbeth at the moment. But it's not just to previous students we have to look.
Will the member take an intervention?
I will, indeed.
Thank you very much for taking an intervention. Having gone to school next door to the MAC, it holds a great place in my heart. I also worked next door to it for a time too. So it was somewhere that was really rooted in my life growing up. And it is incredibly sad to see what has happened to it, not just in terms of the architecture and the building, but of what it has meant to generations of Glaswegians, but also to generations of art students who have gone through its doors. It's also disappointing to see, as my honourable friend mentioned, the other examples in Glasgow of where we're not looking after our heritage in the way that we should. And just today it was reported that the ABC cinema, which was also affected by the fire in the MAC, has had some elements that were meant to be retained, skipped, to use the vernacular. And it really is very, very disappointing that we are in this situation and that Glasgow, that once respected its heritage, now seems to be ignoring it.
Thank the honourable member for that intervention. I think she makes reference to Charles McNair's portico in the ABC cinema, which has sadly been demolished. And she makes reference to generations of art students, past and present. And it is for the educational experience of the future students who are currently undergoing their studies at Glasgow School of Art that we should take cognizance of what's happening as well, and they should not be overlooked. In the years following the fire, and in the absence of the MAC, the beating heart of the school, students were dispersed across the campus estate to workshops and exhibition spaces that removed them from that kind of concentrated network of experience that makes art education so enriching. And it's vital, it's essential that the building is restored so that generations more of artists and students can feel the vibrancy and the alchemy of Macintosh's masterpiece. Now, despite a global outpouring of support and donations after the first fire, the restoration project following the second fire has suffered a series of setbacks, which only fuel the anger, the pain and the frustration of all those who love the MAC. A report by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, published 2 years ago, concluded that the 2018 blaze was so fierce and so all-consuming that the cause might never be known. And earlier this year, the art school, frustrated as anyone else who loves the MAC is, initiated an arbitration process with the insurers over what my honourable friend might have described as an act of God. And this is a very complex case and a very complex claim. It doesn't take in the whole insurable cost of the building, but it is slow enough to slow the restoration and to bring it to a halt until it is resolved. And in 2023, the art school management also had to abandon its search for an architect to lead the restoration, and the meter, of course, is running on that restoration because of a flaw in the procurement process. But thankfully, the GSA board is working on a fresh business case, considering the economic and cultural impact of the art school, not just on Glasgow, but on the rest of Britain and on the world. But it takes into account the pressures that are facing it now in our modern era, the rising cost of living, the effect of a pandemic, of wars, on the cost of construction, and particularly on the cost of heritage reconstruction. Revised costs and completion dates will not be available until early 2025, I'm told. And that means that leading architects and politicians like my good friend Paul Sweeney, MSP, who was formerly of this place, for this House, and heritage experts have expressed dismay at the lack of progress. And their fear, and that of many others who have the best interests of the art school at heart, is that the project is faltering. This is a landmark of national importance, and we are all collectively the custodians of the MAC.
Well, my honourable friend as well?
Yes, of course I will.
Just to ask in terms of my honourable friend, when he talks about the restoration of the art school, would you agree with me that it would be an important impetus to actually give focus to an area which is so rich in cultural and heritage and arts in terms of the art schools there, but so to nearby in that vicinity of Stockley Hall Street, the King's Theatre, the Pavilion, the Theatre Royal, the Royal Conservatoire, the Glasgow Film Theatre, and so on. That the restoration of the art school could actually be the impetus to actually bring that together and create a much more vibrant area, which feels a bit neglected at the moment.
Thank the Honourable Member for that intervention, and he echoes what is actually the bare bones or the Z shape of Glasgow School of Art Board's economic case, that the Glasgow School of Art, the MAC building, is the anchor for that whole zone of development in Glasgow city centre, because it is such an important landmark, one of national importance, as I said, which we are all collectively the custodians of. And it should fall on us as a nation to restore this building to its glory. And this government should be willing and ready to engage with the Glasgow School of Art Board in that project. It's no less than what Glasgow, Scotland and the legacy of Charles Rennie Mackintosh deserve. When Notre Dame was consumed by flames, Mr Efford, the French government threw the entire strength of the state into the effort of restoration, whatever it took, whatever it cost, calling on talent from all over the world. They rebuilt that symbol of the nation in record time. Now, I'm not questioning the ability or the experience of the architects and engineers involved in the restoration project in Glasgow. I'm not questioning the commitment of Glasgow School of Art in wishing to return the MAC into a working undergraduate school, but I am calling on the UK Government to be ready and willing to help. Some have argued that responsibility for restoring Mackintosh's masterpiece should be taken out of the hands of the art school and placed in an independent body, a kind of specialist board of trustees or an Olympic-style delivery system. And there are templates for that have worked before, but I think that needs careful consideration and talks between all parties. And because the aim is the same, everyone has the same destination, and that destination is restoration. And I'm not calling on the Department to bigfoot the art school or trample on the duties of the Scottish Government. I'm just calling for positive engagement from the UK Government to roll up its sleeves, to find a solution for what everyone wants, the restoration of the MAC. It can be done. I'm sure it will be done. And evidence of what can be done is not far from us in the chamber of the House of Commons, bombed out in 1941, faithfully restored after the war, and still working its political alchemy on all of us. And that's what we want for the Mackintosh building too, to rise from the rubble, to work its artistic magic on students, on Glasgow, on Scotland and the world. I beg to move.
The question is that the House has considered government support for Scotland's architectural heritage. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Efford. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'm pleased to respond to this debate on behalf of the government, and I begin, of course, by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for the Western Isles, for securing this very important debate. Now, my honourable friend, the member for the Rhondda and Ogmore, who is also the Minister for Creative Industries, Arts and Tourism, would have ordinarily replied to this debate, but unfortunately he has another parliamentary engagement. However, I will be sure to reflect the content of this debate to him, and I know it is an issue close to his heart, as his mother studied at the Glasgow School of Art, and the honourable member rightly paid tribute to the many who have studied there, and of course the wider impact that the school has had. So I'd like to firstly express my great admiration for all those involved in the rebuild and restoration of the Glasgow School of Art's Mackintosh building after the two terrible fires in 2014 and 2018, and the school's commitment to a faithful reinstatement of the iconic building. As a pioneer of the modernist style, Mackintosh's innovative approach to form and function provides an important contribution to the architectural heritage of Glasgow and beyond. I know this fire and damage to the building has captured the hearts of people across Scotland, as well as celebrities, as mentioned, Peter Capaldi, who has spearheaded the appeal for funding. I'm also aware that the Scottish Parliament debated this issue in 2019, where the impacts on the local community and businesses were emphasised. As my honourable friend will be aware, aware, the UK Government committed £10 million to help restore the damaged building following the 2014 fire. I hope, like all of us here, to see it return to a working art school at the heart of Glasgow's creative and cultural community. Heritage is, of course, a devolved matter, and the Scottish Government has power over its policies and funding within Scotland. 25 years on from the devolution settlement introduced by the previous Labour Government, I'm proud to support the principles behind devolution to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Nevertheless, this Government and Historic England, our statutory agency for heritage, work closely with Historic Environment Scotland, Cadw in Wales and the Department for Communities and Historic Environment Division in Northern Ireland to support our heritage across the UK. We also work closely with our heritage arm's length bodies to promote and protect the UK's diverse and priceless heritage. This is the approach the UK Government has taken and will continue to take to support the restoration of the Macintosh building. In terms of the existing routes and channels through which funding for heritage in the UK is delivered, DCMS delivers two UK-wide funding programmes, the Listed Places of Worship Grant Scheme and the Memorial Grant Scheme. These fund heritage in places of worship and charities across the country. Unfortunately, this also means that neither of these programmes will be appropriate for this restoration. The DCMS arm's length bodies deliver the most significant support for the wider heritage sector, and it is those who I would like to encourage my honourable friend to speak to in relation to the Glasgow School of Art's work to rebuild the Macintosh building. Firstly, he may wish to consider an application for funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Since 1994, the fund has awarded over £970 million of National Lottery and other funding to 5,000 projects in Scotland. Now, the National Lottery Heritage Fund previously provided a grant of £4.7 million in 2005 to the Glasgow School of Art, which saw original features of the building restored and unsympathetic additions removed. The grant also allowed for conservation work to the school's collections, encouraging visitor access to all of the school's heritage assets. And later, in 2017, they provided a grant of £3.5 million to the restoration of the Charles Rennie Macintosh Willow Tea Rooms building at 217 Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow. This year, Glasgow was selected as one of the first 11 priority places to receive a share of £200 million through the fund's Heritage Place initiative. This began with a grant of £350,000 to Glasgow Life to plan and develop a cultural heritage district on the city's iconic Sauchiehall Street. Given this, although it would be a decision for the National Lottery Heritage Fund, I do hope he will consider an application. Secondly, I would like to highlight the National Heritage Memorial Fund as a source of UK-wide heritage funding that may be appropriate in relation to the Macintosh building. It has historically dedicated funds to save Scottish architectural heritage, notably this year with a grant of £5.3 million to save Mavis Bank House just outside Edinburgh, and I'd encourage my honourable friend to speak to them about the options available. And finally, he may wish to encourage an application to the Architectural Heritage Fund, with which the DCMS works closely with. It has helped to bring the new Galloway Town Hall in Dumfries and Galloway into community ownership by providing successive project viability and development grants of between £5,000 and £10,000. This project in particular highlights how we can empower local communities to take ownership of their heritage by bringing neglected historic buildings back into use. Whether providing funding via our existing grant programmes or through our arm's length bodies, we want to ensure that people's access to heritage and other creative industries is not limited by where they live or how much they earn. From the Isles of Scilly to the Western Isles, DCMS is committed to making this ambition a reality. Put simply, it is this government's ambition to support organisations and individuals who protect our heritage and encourage access for all. We want to use that heritage to attract tourists from across the world, providing jobs in local communities and boosting growth. And of course, we want to see this happen across Scotland and throughout the UK. We know that restoring and maintaining heritage assets of all shapes and sizes is an investment into community, helping to boost the local economy. Ensuring everyone has access to these assets brings a renewed sense of pride and commitment to the area, as well as creating social cohesion and inclusion in local communities. Heritage plays an important role supporting well-being and quality of life. This afternoon's debate reminds us of the wealth and value of Scotland's architectural heritage, including the historic Macintosh building, and why it is so important we ensure we all have access to it. Now, although a devolved matter, I have highlighted today how this government and its arm's-length bodies play a vital role in supporting Scotland's architectural heritage. We are open and willing to facilitate conversations with organisations such as the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the National Heritage Memorial Fund to expedite the restoration of the Macintosh, as the Honourable Member quite rightly and passionately outlined. I will relay the contents of this debate and the ask to the Member for the Rhondda, and I'm sure he'll be able to do everything he can to work with the Honourable Member. And as we look to the future, this Government will continue to work with the Scottish Government and with all the devolved administrations to ensure that the UK's heritage is protected and accessible to all. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the Government's support for Scotland's architectural heritage. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. This sitting is suspended until 4:30. Thank you.